welcome to this month of Staffing Monthly. And I am really, really excited to be kicking off a very new segment of this magazine. And it's actually something that was brought to you by the request of the audience. They wanted to know more about the daily life of a recruiter and like what makes one recruiter successful, or what do recruiters do that really push themselves to stratospheric levels of success. And I wanted to launch this segment called The Day in the Life of a Great Recruiter. And I had a number of people that were recommended for this segment. But one particular person stood out to me based on the industry she's in, kind of her path that appears to get to where she's at, but really the passion that she seems to bring to the recruitment industry and how genuine and authentic that she is. And this is somebody that I've got to know only a little bit, and I'm already blown away, and I hope you will be as well. Her name is Nikki Matthews, and she's actually with Govig in Arizona. But she's been in business development and recruiting for over 20 years. But in addition to that, which we're going to get into, she's actually been a yoga practitioner and teacher and has done some really cool things to share that art with the world, especially corporate clients. And we're talking big names like Whole Foods and Amazon and Wegmans and Publix and all of these companies that also have some evergreen principles aligned, which leads me to show you the alignment she has with her company, Govig, that is a certified evergreen organization. And I think all of those principles that they exemplify in our marketplace, she lives out every day. And I'm hoping that she can share that with you today. So Nikki, I am truly blessed and honored to have you here with us today. Thank you for being a part of Staffing Monthly.
Thank you. I'm excited as well.
So this segment is something that people have been asking for. They're like, what do recruiters do in the daily, right? And I'm like, yeah, we should talk about that. So talk to me about this. Like, what are the principles or your purpose overall, before we get into the daily, what are your principles and purposes overall that you just bring to recruitment? Like, what do you care about? What drives you?
My passion is people, period. I like making people feel good. I like identifying with them sometimes their value. I don't know if people always understand that. And just having compassion and empathy and love for whoever I'm chatting with. It really, that's what I love about recruiting, is because we are in the people business. We are. And yeah.
It's so funny. One of the internal conflicts that I have with being in the recruiting industry is I don't personally like how much of someone's self-identity is contrived from the job that they have, but I just understand for some weird reason that's where we've arrived at in society. So it brings me joy to know I can put somebody in a meaningful job that's going to, I guess, prop up their self-value. Do you see it that same way, or do you look at it a little bit differently than that?
So I always say I've been a yogi since the day I was born. So for me, there is no separation, right? So I approach everything, and as I do, either it's my professional career or just everyday life, I approach that with a mentality of that we are who we are. There shouldn't be different hats. I call them avatars, right? There shouldn't be Nikki the avatar who goes to work, and Nikki the avatar who's a wife or a girlfriend. Like, there shouldn't be that. Like, I am one person, I have one soul, and I think that's my approach to life, and that goes into my professional and personal life, that you are who you are, you have to love what you do. We're only, you've heard probably of the dash, right? So we only have X amount of time that we're here on this wonderful earth. So I want to make the best of that. And through my life experiences, I think I really do. I really do.
I love that. I love that you focus on the person and the value that they have just as an individual, and not all the labels that we pack around ourselves in our daily lives and of roles and responsibilities. And so something that you said before we started rolling that I absolutely connected with was, I'm going to let you say it, but what is the biggest thing that your reviews and in your look backs that you're doing with your people right now, what is the biggest theme that everyone at your organization is considering a differentiator in the workplace right now?
As far as Govig is concerned, like within our organization?
Yeah.
Our corporate culture here is like no other. And it's interesting, when I came on board with Govig, it was a choice, right? I actually looked for a company that I thought would be in most alignment with where I am at today in my life. And I was 100% accurate with that. The way that Todd Govig runs this company, the compassion, our core values. And one of our core values is be human. And we talk about them in every staff meeting. I mean, it's always, we actually have four, but I feel like be human is like the ebb and the flow, right? People have kids, people get sick, things happen. We're getting older. We have to, start caring for our parents. Things start to shift, and Govig shifts with you and identifies that, yes, you are here to do a job, but you also have a life. And part of that is things happen, and we have to ebb and flow with that, and we have to support each other. And that's what I really love about Govig.
That's it. And that be human element is so important. I feel like a lot of companies just, they overthink it. Like they try to digitize and automate and all of these things, and they forget that at the end of the day, companies are just groups of people, and we're all out there, we're doing our best every day, to bring it and strive towards something. And I think that when you forget about being human, then you overlook the fact that the human element is the most important element of any corporation. It's the only differentiator that we have in this industry. So I love that that's what you're doing at Govig, and that's a core guiding principle for you there. Mm-hmm. So I really want to get into the daily format. Like, how do you approach your day? And I gotta believe as a yogi that you are incredibly mindful. So you probably have some habits or routines or rituals. So let's just start with like the setup to your day. When you know that you're getting ready for the next day, is there anything that you do to prepare for a day, or any special morning routines that you might have to make sure that you're in the best space to bring your best self to the day?
I do. I mean, of course I wake up and I always go, we live out here in Arizona, so I take advantage of that. I get my mind right and I hike. I get in nature first thing in the morning, or actually at lunch, because we're hybrid right now. For me, the first thing that I do is go on LinkedIn. I love the LinkedIn network. It's the first, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm on there just seeing who's doing what and connecting. I have a tremendous amount of friends and colleagues on there. So that's the number one thing I do to prepare for my day and follow up through those conversations. And then I just see where I'm at in the process of, like, if we have interviews going. We have incredible support staff here at Govig. We have great admins and project coordinators. So usually connect with them, see what's on their agenda. What else do I go? Gosh, I plan my day the night before. So I usually know if I'm working on business development, I have a time block for business development, and we have great lists, and I have ways of connecting with people through business development. So I time block, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I make sure I meditate and hike. That's really what I do every day. And so I know it's like you're probably saying, like, what do you do as a recruiter? But I feel like, part of me being a recruiter is being balanced. And in an industry that we are always talking, we are moving and shaking. Sometimes there's chaos, and I love that part of it. I love when things are going and things are moving and grooving. But your mind needs to be right in that. And sometimes I take a little time and I just breathe. I step back, and so for me, that's very important.
I love that, and there's so many things there that I want to go a little bit deeper into. So first off, let's talk about the LinkedIn game. Obviously, when people think about social media and platforms and recruiting, LinkedIn is the very natural platform where we all coexist. So do you have any thoughtful strategies or any like tactical approaches that you do with LinkedIn? Like, like which groups you're going to check first, or like how you engage on posts? Or do you just sort of approach it in whatever natural way there is that day?
So it's natural. It really is organic. Unless I know that I want to connect with somebody, or if I post something, and I probably check my posts first, but it's not really strategic. I'm like right on my phone. I do all of that through my phone, right? So it's right there. I check it. I connect with people. I do a lot of LinkedIn notes. As a recruiter, we can do, so when you're connecting with somebody, say I wanted to connect with you, and then you could add a note.
Right.
I am always adding notes. I make it specific for why I'm reaching out. Hey, we're in the same industry, or hey, I'd love to connect with you, because of this. So I do make that very specific. That's a consistent part of me building my brand and building the business and making personal connections with, people in the healthcare industry, which is what I'm in. I'm in the healthcare industry, and we work, with a lot of executives in healthcare. So that's really important to me to connect with the right people that I can help.
I love that. So with that, so you said two things that I want to hone in on, where you check your posts first, and then also the notes side of it. I want to talk about that, and then I want to circle back to personal brand before we get more into some BD and recruitment stuff. So how often are you posting on LinkedIn? Do you have a plan that you follow, or I guess we'll start there. How often are you posting on LinkedIn, and what kind of content?
So I do have so we were at the MRI conference, back in, I think it was last year of maybe March or April. And that was, I'm a little bit older. I came back into the recruiting game. I started with Robert Half years ago. So coming back into, and I've, been in roles where I'm hiring and doing all that, but coming back on the recruitment side, I wasn't on LinkedIn anymore. I didn't need to be. And so when I first came to Govig, they're like, we were talking about LinkedIn, and I thought, oh my gosh, another social media platform. And really, it's really what I had gotten away from in the last couple of years of just like, I want to get off social media. Like, I want to be present, like we had this constant battle of, I want to be present, but yet you want to, you have to build your brand, and you want to, and you do want to be on, on LinkedIn. It's fun. So once I bought into that, I had this, I went to this, gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, something over my words. So I went to an event at the conference, and it was like somebody was speaking, and they're like, listen, be consistent with what you're posting, and don't be afraid to build your personal brand within your professional brand. And so I am who I am, right? And even when I came here, one of the first things, like, I'm in healthcare. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona, where, I mean, fitness and health is such a huge part of our daily life.
Right.
And I made a conscious decision to say, I am who I am, and yoga has been what's led me. So I try to do 2 to 3 posts a week, either something about yoga, something humanitarian that is close to my heart, and really one professional post. So whether it's I'm looking for, particular talent, or I have talent that I want people to become aware of, I post about that. But a majority of it is 3 to 4, sometimes 5 times a week. Sometimes on the weekends, and I'm consistent with that part.
I love that. And I'm willing to venture that you probably didn't think about it the way that I just observed it when you were telling it to me, but with those 3 types of posts, one was about your passion for yoga, which is central to who you are. Mm-hmm. One was about humanitarian posts, which is something that you believe about the world and how you interact in the world. And then the third one was about your profession, kind of the impact that you're making on the world. And I just thought that was a very interesting triangle that probably creates a little bit of balance. And for those listening out here, I think that's a really important thing that Nikki just shared, is that when you're posting on LinkedIn, if you're a recruiter or really any role, it doesn't all have to be just professional. Just because LinkedIn is sort of built as the professional social media, if you really want to connect with people, especially in this industry where it's so important, building that personal brand means being vulnerable, showing the world who you really are. And you can't be afraid of that. You can't be insecure about who you are in this world, because no matter what, there are so many people on this planet that even if you feel like you are different than anybody else, I guarantee you there's an audience out there that wants to hear your message. So Nikki, I appreciate you sharing that about the personal branding side of it. I think it's really important. Have you found that your connections with the people you're recruiting or the clients that you're servicing are stronger because they can sort of get to know you better through those mediums?
I have to tell you, honestly, every job order or even meeting that we've had, this is a 100%, it's all started with yoga. I mean, I've had CEOs, CFOs, vice presidents reach out to me, and I've already done some stuff in the area where, they'll say, hey, can you come teach, healthcare, different healthcare facilities, can you come teach for us? And what better way to like show who you are? Like, as an organization, Govig does support that, but like, we're going into people's offices and seeing their culture and saying, hey, we just came off the hardest years of our life. We're all in this together. Staffing has shifted, employment has shifted, how we're working has shifted, and people are stressed out, and that is being brought into the workplace. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we literally all of my connections on LinkedIn that people reach out to me is about yoga. Now, a lot of professional, as far as, okay, what are your services? What do you do? But it always starts with the yoga piece, always.
I believe that because at the end of the day, we're in the people business and we're all about being human. And it's a whole lot easier to connect with somebody over a common interest, right? Mm-hmm. Than it is a problem solution pain point, right? Because if they have to go to you because they can't fill their own roles, a lot of times there's insecurity in that. And they don't want to reach out and be like, hey, Nikki, I'm really struggling with filling these roles. Can you help me out? Because that's an admittance of failure in a sense. But if they say, hey, wow, this is amazing that you do this. I love this about you. You're just a really amazing person. Could you help me over here? Like, it's just an easier bridge to get over. So I believe that's a very, very natural. I think it's great advice for anyone watching this. So let's talk about the time blocking piece of it. I'm a planner. I'm also a time blocker. I had an amazing interview that's also going to be airing in the same issue with Angela Cripps. And I don't want to give it away. Everyone go watch it. It's a really good one. But it came up about my planning style, and I'm a time blocker. And so I want to ask, you mentioned that, so I want to dig into this. Do you follow any time blocking tactics? Is your calendar completely full back to back to back? Do you use a Google or Outlook calendar? You use a planner? Like, what's your style with time blocking? How are you managing your time to be most effective?
So I do still like pen and paper. I'm old school. But I use my calendar. I time block usually in an hour and a half increments. So if I'm in a business develop, I'll have an hour and a half and I'll just put, business development. And usually I'll have, the companies that I want to develop. So I know where that list is going and who I'm calling. And then it's just sometimes I actually have time where I put on there, follow up with LinkedIn if I had conversations or messages. I mean, I time block down to the hour. I leave open space for ebbing and flowing and things come up. And anything can really be moved around based on what the needs of the business are or however things are going that day. But I feel that I have ADD, right? So if I do not time block and an email pops up, that easily can take me away. And then it's like you're going down this like rabbit hole of, okay, now I'm checking my emails. I've become really good at sticking to my plan.
Good. What was your trigger point? Because there's a lot of people out there that struggle with that exact situation. So what do you feel like was your tipping point to go from letting chaos manage you to being able to manage the chaos?
That's a good question. What was my tipping point? Well, we talk a lot about that. We do a tremendous amount of training here. I think Todd Govig, he says, learning is never convenient, and that's the truth. So
it's great.
I love it. Yeah, he says that learning is never convenient, and it's the truth. But we do a lot of investing. So like we have business development meetings. So I think in just recruiting from some of the best. I mean, we have people that have been with Govig for years. So the talent here, just in recruiting and relationship building, it's legit. We got good talent here. So I would say that through the course of us doing training and listening and hearing people who've been doing this for so long and are very, very successful, they're like, you have to time block. If you are not time blocking, then your days are going to get away from you. You're not going to be as successful. You're not going to see, little small measurements and incremental measurements of what's happening. You got to make a lot of phone calls sometimes, and you have to do a lot of follow up in this business. So I feel like time blocking keeps me like on the straight and narrow for that. So I think the tipping point was, how sometimes you're not able to hear things until you're able to hear it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes somebody can say, in yoga, I do that. Like, okay, move your left foot, move your left foot, move your left foot. Then maybe 5 classes later, I'm like, oh, they moved their left foot. They can hear it. They can hear the cueing. It's the same thing with recruiting. It's the same thing with life. I was able to hear it from the best people. And as soon as I started implementing it, I got faster. Things started happening a little bit more.
That's true. And that's what they say. It's about being human. We're all like that. Yeah. And they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? Yep. So I love that. And Todd sounds amazing. I hope to meet him someday and just learn more about his vision and how he's built this company, which by all billing from the stuff that I've seen on it is fantastic. Like your culture just, it seems incredible and it permeates the walls of the building, which is incredible. So how do you balance? I know you said time blocking and whatnot, but let's go a little bit deeper into the actual techniques. So business development, you said you block out like an hour and a half of that. Actually, before I ask this question, there's something I wanted to ask. Have you ever heard of the productivity planner?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna send you a link. So I will tell you this. So for me, the tipping point to becoming a little bit more effective in managing
Mhm.
was using principles within this very specific planner called the productivity planner. I'll send you a link on it.
Okay.
It's pretty incredible. Anytime that like I'm in a season of business where it's a lot of tasks, right? Like sometimes there's like long tasks that you just need to spend like days working on, but then there's like all these little tasks that you got to check off and be mindful moving through. Anytime I'm in a season like that, the productivity planner is my absolute go-to. And it's an amazing tool. I have them always on hand in case I need to jump into that technique. I'll send
All
you a
right.
link. It's pretty incredible.
Thank you.
Anyway, so going back to it, so you mentioned that you might block out like an hour and a half to do business and development. So what do you do? Like, what's your approach to get new prospects interested in meeting with you and using Govig as a recruiting partner?
So, well, first, we've been in healthcare for 44 years, but I came on board, we started a new niche. So we are in acute, so I'm on the acute side of healthcare. Basically on the West Coast side of the market, but really Arizona and Colorado, New Mexico. So I pick 10 to 15 companies. I go into LinkedIn. I see who's who. We do executive level. I connect with them on LinkedIn and look a little bit more about their company, write them a note, and then I call them. So I'm able, that's really, if I pick, so when I'm doing business development, I'll pick those companies. I go and see what's going on with them through LinkedIn or like Zoom info, and then I note them and then I call them. That's my process every single time for business development.
So that's it. So basically, you're like, here's these 10 or 15 companies that
Yeah.
I'm going to target prospect. And then you go do a little bit of research. You find out the key players, some interesting bits about them, who they are in the marketplace. And then you go find those people on LinkedIn and then you shoot them a note. So is it an in-mail message or is it a connection request with a personalized message?
It's a connection request with a personal message. I
And
have found that, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The return rate on that for me, I don't really have the numbers, but I would say at least 80 to 90%. If I leave a note, I always get an answer back. Like, and then, and how LinkedIn is set up, but then you're able to pop up. Like I access that so much better than going into my messages. And I feel like the response rate is just better for me.
So what is your go-to secret sauce for that personalized note that you send along with that connection request?
It's different. So I'll bring up Word and I'll have things, it's only 300 characters. So
Right.
So I have it down. So I'll have many different ones that are already pre-written, depending on, if they're CEO or COO or executive level. So wherever they're at, I already have some already made up and then I just switch out the name unless there's something particular. Like if I'm MPCing and I say, hey, I have a gentleman who has this background, would love to chat with you about him as soon as I can. I'm going to give you a call. Then I will personalize that if it's specific, if I, have somebody for a position. But other than that, it's just pretty general. Like, hey, we're always, and we do it from, hey, would love to work with you, but also like, where are you at in your career? So I do it from two different levels so that I can, have a little bit of a better conversation and connect with them on a personal level, even before a professional level.
I love that. So if you're building a little bit more of a personal connection, when in that process do you say, and this is on the business development side, when do you say, hey, could we have a business conversation around, Govig as being a recruiting partner? Like when you propose that?
I have to tell you, a lot of times I'll be like, would love to chat with you. I keep it very simple. And then when I get them on the phone, I have a really organic conversation. Like, what are your needs? Where are you guys at? What positions do you have a hard time filling? And I always position myself because I really truly mean it. We are an extension of their human resources department.
Yeah.
I want to partner with them. And when I take that approach, I just think it's more inclusive and it takes everybody's guard down. It's like, I'm not here to tell you that you're not doing your job. I'm here to be an extension of what you guys may need. And you might not need me right now, but here's my number. I'll stay in contact with you. That's
Yeah,
my approach.
And it makes total sense because not to commoditize our industry more than it's already been in a sense to our own doing at times, but we really are. We're just a tool or a resource for the HR department to utilize, and we're not from a result standpoint, but as far as like a resource allocation standpoint, we're not any different than using job boards or going to career fairs or anything like that. The difference with us is that there's actually professionals on the other side of that resource that's going to go get the job done the best way possible. So that makes a ton of sense there. So, and then your process, okay, you had this business conversation. Do you do contingency, retain search? Like what kind of agreements are you getting in place with your clients to get them people?
We are retained.
Okay.
We no longer are doing contingent. We're 100% retained on the healthcare side.
So why did you make that change? Because that's a big business shift. So why did you make that change to say, we're not going to do contingent anymore, we're only going to do retained?
Well, that's a question for Todd. We weren't privy to those conversations, but I think just in the market and basically the level of how we perform, we are executive level. We take a lot of time to get to know the candidate and the client. And at the end of the day, we might not be the best fit. We're not here to say, hey, we're your best fit. We want to have conversations to say, this is what we do. We can streamline this process for you. We can add a lot of benefit and take some things off your plate. But in that, we have a whole team. So in being retained, you're retaining us to give you 100% support and to handle this process. And for some people, that's like, great, take it. This position's been open for a year and I can't do this anymore. Like, I want your team to do it. And I think that's really important. And you know what, we have a lot of value in our organization, and a lot of our team is awesome. We have sourcers, and the support that they give the executive recruiters here is like no other. I mean, it absolutely is no other. So when you're hiring us, you're not just hiring, Nikki Matthews, you're hiring all of Govig and, in our network and just like 27 to 30 recruiters that are all helping and have, 2,000, we always tell people we have like 2,000 connects a day, really. So that's who, when you're getting Govig, you're getting that. I mean, not many recruiters have that.
No, they don't. And so the word that you hit, and again, I wasn't privy to those conversations either, but if I'm willing to ask Todd why they made that fundamental business shift, I'm willing to bet the simple answer would be because we know our value and we're worth it.
Period.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it, and sometimes when you have that value to offer, you have to just draw your line in the sand and say, I know what I'm worth. And if you don't recognize what I'm worth, then we're probably not a good fit for each other. And it's okay to step in to who you really are as a person and as a company and say, I'm worth it, So I love that. And that's why I see it. So last question around that, and then I want to jump over to the recruiting side on this. So when they made that shift, were there any people internally that were like, I don't know if we're going to get as much business on retain? Like, was there any sort of scarcity mindset or nervousness about doing that? Or did everybody just say, do they just lean in and say, let's go?
So I think that change breeds a little bit of fear, right? I think that the natural response to that is like, oh gosh, like this is how we've been doing it for years. When we started the acute side of the business, which like I was saying is a little over a year ago, there was no option. We started 100% retained. So I've never known anything different, but I think some people it's a hard conversation to have. It's a hard conversation to say, hey, give me a third up front, of a big salary and have faith in us and have faith in our process. So I think it was more about having that conversation and like you said, and knowing our value, and we're going to hear some no's, and that's okay. But this is who we are. If you want us, this is what we do. So the confidence in that, I think, is what was hard to have that conversation. That's a hard conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah.
To say, hey, pay me $20,000 and I'll start looking. I mean, that's a hard conversation. So yes, I think there was a little resistance, but I think now we're seeing that it's been better. It's better.
But do you know what that does for the belief of the people inside Govig when they're like, wow, like we're worth it and people are paying it and we're delivering value, which means that like it's completely working. Not only do they get stronger belief, it raises morale and it increases the value, the self-value piece of it, which means they're going to perform better. And it's just going to be this amazing loop of progress. So I love that. I love that. So let's switch gears because this is about the, day in the life of a great recruiter. And I want to talk about the recruiting side. So talk to me about your recruiting approach. When you are blocking out time to do recruitment, how do you plan that? You're probably working on, I would say, multiple recs at a time, looking for different candidates, maybe working with different clients. Like, how do you plan that to keep everything organized and get your recs filled?
So say I have 3 different recs, I will take an hour and a half and literally write what that position's for and just recall on that, LinkedIn message on that. We have our sources, like I said, so we'll have meetings based around, okay, this is what we're doing at, 11 a.m. We're working on this. Can you get me some more candidates for this? But it's really time blocking and knowing how I'm going to execute it for that day. So if I'm going to make 25 calls, then I'm going to make 25 calls and I put that down, I put the number down so I can see it. And then, if I'm going to do 25, same thing, like if it's a LinkedIn message, I make sure that there's a number around that because I'm very number driven. I need that. So that's how I do it. I just literally take an hour and a half of my day. After an hour and a half, I need to get up and walk around. An hour and a half is my point of where I need to like stretch the legs or something. So an hour and a half time blocks for those. And it could be 3 or 4 different times during the day.
And are you primarily just using LinkedIn Recruiter, or do you have any other go-to sources for recruitment?
So we have a tremendous amount. We have like Definitive Healthcare, we have Zoom Info, but usually that's where our sourcers are doing a lot of that for us.
Right.
So do I use them? Absolutely. But that's why we're so planned. We have these meetings where it's like, hey, we're going to work on this director position in this market, and they just go after it, and we just make the calls and I write the notes.
I love it. And your sources, when they're submitting candidates to you, sometimes they're going to nail it, sometimes they're going to miss the mark. First question is, do you have dedicated sources that just support you and your recs, or is it a pool of sources that work with recruiters and account managers? And then the second one is, how do you coach them to make sure that they're progressing and getting better at sending candidates that match your recs? So
on the acute side of our business, we have 2 people and they're amazing, period. How do I coach them? They're part of the process. They're just as important as me. They're just as important as the candidate or whoever we're talking to. It's very, very inclusive. If, we'll, even on a phone call, the gentleman I work with, Kyle, I'll say, Kyle, do you have anything? And, he supports a couple different people. So I don't know what he's hearing, right? He's a smart guy, and he adds so much value to us. So when we're sourcing, he may hear something different in a conversation, going back to like we were talking about, you never know when you're going to hear things.
Yeah.
It's inclusion. And then we talk about it, and when we have our meetings every week, it's like, okay, what do we think about this? Where can we tweak this? Where are we finding better candidates? What jargon do we use in that email? What was our return rate on that email? What was our return rate on that in-mail? So we do look at those numbers. Like I said, for me, I am very ROI and numbers driven. So if I send out 200 emails, like we say, we're not going to send these emails anymore, not the way that we're doing it this way, because we get no return. If we do a note, we get like 90% return. So those are the conversations that we have, and we pivot and we look at things from different perspectives, or what's happening in the market, what's going on in a state, what's going on within that company. So yeah, we're communicating, really.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing in the recruitment marketplace right now?
My gosh. In healthcare, it's tough. I think what I've been hearing lately is, well, we're pivoting from the pandemic and we don't have as many recruiting dollars. We're cutting our recruiting budget, right? So we're hearing that a lot, and I'm seeing that, but there is such a shortage of directors of nursing, assistant directors of nursing. I don't work on the skilled nursing facility part of it, but we do have that. Just people are so burnt out with the census, and just from the pandemic, and some of these places being so full and so tapped out and so stressed that I feel like it's paralyzed some people, that they're not able to make hiring decisions, or you have people who are so burnt out that they're just like throwing in the towel. So I think with recruiting, the challenges are the market coming off the pandemic and a shortage of nurses for us.
I agree with that. So you got to pick your shots a little bit. You got to decide which ones do you work on, right? Because you want to still be successful for the organization and for your clients. But I know this is back on the BD side, and then I'm going to ask a similar question on the recruiting side. But when a client tells you that, or a prospective client tells you, "Hey, we're slashing our recruiting budget," how do you respond to that? Like, how do you navigate that objection?
So first of all, I do empathize with them because I get it. I mean, we've all been in positions where we have to. I turn it back around. Oh, this is a value that we can add. I know it can be a spend, but where in your organization are you needing the most help? So I put it back into like their pain point of, we are here. This is the value. Maybe right now is not the best time, but feel free to contact us. And I just really, I mean, what are you going to say to that? If somebody says you don't have enough money, you can't be like, oh, you got to spend with us. I just try to empathize and then say, I'm here, and continue to support them and say, when you're ready, and just try to find out if there's any other opportunities or pain points that they need help with.
So that's good. You asked, what are you going to say to that? And so I love your empathetic approach. I'm naturally an empathetic person, but sometimes I recognize that people need some help getting out of their own way. And sometimes they realize like, hey, yeah, we don't have these hard dollars to invest in recruiting. But where it gets a little bit murky is they don't really understand the financial impact on the organization if the position they really need help filling goes unfilled much longer. So if I'm in that situation, and I'm only saying this because you said, what do you say to that? And I'm like, I'm going to answer that question. Is I would ask, like, hey, I completely understand your situation. You're not alone. Like, most companies are scaling back on recruitment dollars, and it's a tight labor market out there. But before we just throw in the towel on working together or delay it, let's just take a step back and think about it. Like, how important is it to fill this position? And what is the financial or economic implications on your organization if it goes unfilled for X amount of time? And how long does it need to go unfilled before making this investment with me today becomes a smart investment?
Yeah.
And
I do say some variation of that. That's where, I was saying that I'll take it like, what's going on in your company, like asking those questions. But you're right. It's like, what are you losing because you're not filling this position?
Yeah. And
how much money are you losing?
And the reason I think it's important, and I don't ever try to use it as like a verbal judo technique or anything. It's very easy to look at a profit loss statement or a budget and be like, I don't have it, because those are black and white concrete numbers. It's very, very hard for people to conceptualize the financial impact to an organization when key producers, especially at the level that you're recruiting for, goes unfilled, and that could set back a company, decades, honestly. Yeah. So I think that's big. So on the recruiting side, I know you're at a much higher level, so it probably happens less, but what kind of counter offer situations are you seeing right now? Is there any ghosting or people backing out of committed offers? Are you experiencing any of that right now?
I personally, and on the acute side, we have not. I did fill one position about 6 months ago where, there were counters, but it was two completely different markets. It was, Arizona market versus a California market. So that was just basically saying, hey, well, you're going to be in Arizona, you're not going to be in California. So, they were trying to counter, and we finally gotten a number that made sense for everybody. But other than that, no, I haven't had any ghosting when it comes to offers. And I did put somebody in a position that they ended up letting them go, and I was sad about that. And I thought to myself, like, what could I have done a little bit differently on this particular position? But I just think it was the red flags were not there. But as soon as he got in the organization, it was like, okay, who is this person? So that's it. But counters, no, just having conversations of, people are getting into, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I went off track there, sorry. But yeah, counters, we haven't had too much of that, counter offers. Not on my side anyway.
I think it's great. So there's a couple quick things I want to get through before we get to the end, and I want to respect your time. But I have another book. You said that you're big into training, and that's huge. So I'm guessing you're probably some type of a reader, or at least an Audible listener. Yeah. So have you heard of the book Together We Rise?
No.
So I think it's something you'd be really interested in. It came out, I believe, earlier this year. but it was actually co-authored by probably 15 of the either some of the top or emerging women leaders in the staffing industry. And it's pretty amazing. So if you've not read it, I would go check it out. You could honestly probably just put Together We Rise in LinkedIn, and you're going to find any of the authors. But it's a powerhouse cast of authors that wrote this, and it's a great book. It really is insightful about the journey of women in our industry, and yeah, so I would recommend that side of it. Last two questions on the technology side. So you talk all about process and how you're, different techniques you're using to be successful. What about technology? I always got to ask this one. Is Govig a Google company using Google Suite, Gmail, or are you a Microsoft company using Outlook for email?
Outlook. We're using Outlook.
Okay. And obviously, so the calendar as well. So what about a software? Do you have a specialty recruiting software that you use? Anything like that?
So I think we're in the process of, we're currently with DFE. So I know I believe we're in the process of changing soon.
Okay.
But I mean, our database is great as far as being able to pull, from DFE. I love it.
Okay.
I think what they're looking to though is to sync things up where as soon as a phone call comes in, it goes right into their file and makes it a lot easier. Because you make those business development calls, you make calls and you're like, okay, wait, who are you? You're going back and you're playing phone calls over again because you're just like, oh my gosh, when did I call you? And you obviously want to document that for just as a company, so what's going on with that particular person. But oh, you know what? I think it's called Creely. I think Creely is who we're bringing on as the new software.
Creely, is there Crelate? Crelate?
I think it's Crelate. Yes.
Crelate. Yep.
Yeah.
I know them over there. Yeah. I was thinking for the type of work that you do in your structure that Crelate's probably a good fit. Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah. Well, certainly good luck with that. Technology transitions and going back to that change incites a little bit of fear and nervousness. It's always something to get through, but usually when you get through it, you're better on the other side.
Yeah.
Last question I have for you, just if you were going to talk to any of the recruiters that are watching this video right now and give just one sound piece of advice to help them on their journey to be a great recruiter, what would that be? That
is so simple to me. Listen effectively. Because really, people are giving you a lot of information. And from just like going back to be human, just listen. What are they telling you? I mean, sometimes we want to dive right into the business part of it. I don't work like that. I always say, tell me who you are on both sides. Like, even if I'm talking to an HR person, I'm a jokey, positive, upbeat person. But in asking a few simple questions, people will talk and just listen. And then from that, you're going to have the next question. We overthink it. And the mindset always is not to get a job. It's to create a relationship. And it will go so far if you just listen.
Man, that just triggered another question. I know I said I'm infamous.
No, I have the time.
For last question. So you said it creates that relationship, and you've talked all about your human process and building a personal brand and building relationships. So that leads me to go back to one more recruiting centric question for a trend I see is candidate referrals. How much of part of your process or success comes from actually getting candidate or employee referrals from the people you place or the people in your network?
So that has increased tremendously. I would say, I just started building this desk a year ago. With creating this new niche, we had I always say it's like a startup, right? We have a little, that's how I refer to our team. This is our little startup, Acute Healthcare for us is our startup. So, getting out there and meeting the right people is challenging, especially when you're building a desk. Because I listen, because I check in, follow up, they always say follow-ups in the fortunes of the follow-up. It's so important. I would say the last 3 to 4 months, it has increased a tremendous amount. And it's all through it really is all through LinkedIn. Just people saying, hey, we work a lot confidentially too. We have people come to us confidentially. I mean, we all do that, but especially at the executive level, I think I see that more. Yeah. So I would say probably, I don't need to go looking for amazing talent as much as I used to because it's now coming to me. But that's just by creating relationships and saying something as simple as like, hey, even people that I haven't placed. And I think that's kind of a testament, not that I'm saying a testament to me, but like the human factor, right? I haven't placed people, and actually, there's a gentleman who I just actually got an email a couple days ago. He had sent it to Hadley. It's a gentleman I worked with for almost a year, and I didn't place him, but he wrote an email because I was consistent. And then he said to me, you know, I'm going to make sure that I reach out to my people, because you're the only recruiter we're going to work with, because you were consistent, you were atypical. And I was like, oh, but it was just so organic, like just even sending a note and saying, hey, Jim, we haven't spoken in a while. Like, how's it going? What's new? Period. Like, we don't have to overthink this. Like, we can just say, hey, how are you doing today? Like,
it's so true.
But we overthink, like, okay, how could we strategize? Like, just say, hey.
Yeah.
I have very small, like, my little notes, you know, once I get a conversation, it's like, hey, just checking in, what's going on, you know, and it's not formal. It's it's how I am. I'm a very informal, kind of like laid back person. And I just let my personality come through. And I think that then it's genuine. It's like, hey, she's really asking how I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I appreciate you sharing that. So last part is for you. So just take a couple minutes just to share, like, what is Govig is a company. I know you've kind of teased it out through a little bit, but just kind of your statement about who Govig is in the marketplace, and then any contact information that you might want to share. If someone wants to reach out to you and say, hey, Nikki, would you mind sharing more information about what you do? Or, hey, I'm looking for a role, or maybe it's just an addition to your network.
Yeah, so I cannot, and you know, you always, when you talk about your company, you always think, oh, they probably think I'm brown nosing. And that is not the case. I really did my due diligence. I took 2 years off in the pandemic. My mother had passed away, and I was that person that said, you know what, I'm going to take some time. And that's a hard thing to do, you know, because you think about like, gosh, how will this affect my, you know, my career path, but I'm glad I did. It was the best thing I ever did. So when I decided to come back to Scottsdale, I really started looking. And from the moment I came in, actually, my first interview here, Hadley, who's our president, actually, I couldn't believe he was the guy. I'm like, hey, how are you? He's like, hey, so nice. And I was like, he's the president? Because you don't see that in the organizations, right? You don't see the president coming to the front door and saying, hey, how can I help you? It's like, oh, I have an interview. Oh, okay, cool. You do not see that, right? So everybody here is so accessible. Govig, we've been, you know, on the healthcare side, we've been in business for 44 years. Todd Govig is, you know, our CEO. His parents started the business years ago. It's a very loving, compassionate, kind place to work. The culture, I mean, we have ugly sweater days. We have let's make macaroni and cheese days. We have the whole 5th floor. We're down in almost Old Town Scottsdale, where we overlook Camelback Mountain. So right now, as I'm talking to you, I can see Camelback Mountain.
Beautiful.
And so we have this beautiful landscape around us, and that it's like just perfect for how we are. So yeah, as far as executive search, we are definitely a leader in that niche, and especially in healthcare. I would love to help anybody out that's looking. Along with healthcare, though, we also have a biopharma division and then a local division. Locals, where we have more like, you know, building products, sales, that type of positions that across the country. We do work on a national level. So we would love to help you with any job search, or just even if you need any consulting, or if you need speakers, or you need someone to talk about staffing. We have a tremendous amount of longevity within our organization. People have been here for 28, 30 years. Like, that's unheard of.
That's amazing.
That is unheard of. Some of our, I think our 2 people, definitely it's almost 30 years that they've been with the organization. And even in the healthcare side, we have a tremendous amount of longevity of people here, which is great for me, because you get to learn from the best people.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the culture.
Absolutely. It's so fun. Like, I really do look forward to coming into work, because they spice it up and keep it fun. But yeah, so, you know, I work, like I said, on the healthcare side. People are more than welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and or you can call me. I do pick up the phone. So I can share the information. Gosh, do you want me to say my number?
No, I'll put the stuff on page.
Right.
I have it, so I'll just share it.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we'd love to help. We would. I'd love to help any way we can.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Thank you so much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
all of that information, and just your positive energy for our industry is certainly what we need. And
can I say something? Oh, sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry. The other thing I did want to say is that, you touched on, corporate yoga. So we do Govig Wellness here. And so if you ever need a yoga, so we sponsor under under Govig, but I would love to come teach yoga. If you guys have any conferences or even talk about, integrating yoga in the workplace, how do you de-stress in the workplace? I am open to going anywhere in the country, and I've been doing it for many, many years, and it's a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So there's
Yes.
a lot of like corporate and associations and things like that subscribe to this. So I'm sure they're taking note of that. And if I know of any opportunities, I'll certainly send them your way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for sharing all of this and giving us a glimpse into the day of a great recruiter. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.